Some of you just want to be around like-minded liberty lovers. And then some of you guys are actually here to fight for liberty, right? You guys are, you see injustice and you want to take it on. You want to try to eradicate it. Or you want your children and grandchildren to be free. Something I want. You fear the economic collapse that's coming. Who knows when, but it's coming. Or you fear that the government's eventually going to turn their thugs on you. Or maybe you just care about your fellow man. I don't know. But everyone who's fighting for liberty, is going down that path. The reason that I'm here is not to sell you guys on liberty. You guys are probably already halfway there, if not all the way there. Some of you guys are much further than I am. Some of you guys are true anarchists. But we all come to liberty in our own ways, on our own timelines. And, my path, was a very unique path for me. And I know that each of you guys are going down your own particular path. I'm actually here to help encourage you guys to, almost like a call to arms for you guys to elevate your fight for liberty, to get out from behind Facebook or to stop just fighting or just talking about liberty amongst the people in this room, but to actually do something to grow liberty so that for the people who are here because they're trying to expand liberty, they can see real progress within our lifetimes. So I would like to see people act instead of critique others. And I'd like to see people organize instead of trying to divide. And I'd like to see people celebrate and support people within the movement instead of trying to tear them down, which is something that's been really disappointing to see throughout the liberty movement. It seems every single time someone starts to get a foothold and start to grow, a lot of people come out and start attacking them, right? Adam Kokesh is an example, right? Some of you guys might not like Adam Kokesh, but he's a guy who put himself out there and then he started to get a lot of support along the way, and then people started turning against him. He's just one example of many. John Bush is someone here locally. He just goes out there and fights every day, and he's doing awesome stuff. And then people, have issues with his personality, and then they spend their time trying to tear him down instead of trying to support him and pick him up. So, I'm trying to hopefully get people to get past that. And this is one of my favorite quotes. It's by a guy who was a president, Teddy Roosevelt. So, I don't endorse the man, but I endorse the quote. And it's one of my favorite quotes of all time. It's not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles, or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes short again and again, because there is no effort without error and shortcomings, but who does actually strive to do the deeds, who knows great enthusiasms, the great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at the best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who neither knew victory nor defeat. All right, so let me tell you a bit about myself. It may come off as a lot of patting myself on the back, and so be it if that's the case, but I think that my background is relevant to the story that I'm about to tell. I was the first son of a guy who dropped out of high school. Vietnam vet, 3 tours as an infantryman, and after Vietnam he went to Korea, met his wife, my mom, and brought her over to the United States, and had me, and then had my brother a year later. We grew up pretty poor in the projects. We received government subsidies, government cheese, welfare at times, food stamps, and we were also taught to always celebrate our government. Lots of nationalism, especially in my hometown. Celebrate the state, appreciate the cops, thank the military, and always respect our elected leaders. But that aside, that was part of being from Pottsville, Pennsylvania. Everyone felt like that, unfortunately. But my dad, one thing that he always taught us was to always be respectful, to hold our values very highly, and to not complain about the situation that we're in, to just act. And so that's one of the things that he really taught me whenever we graduated from high school. So I was the first one to graduate from high school. I went to West Point, the United States Military Academy. And although I hated the structure and lifestyle of it, I always talked it up to other people, tried to make out like, ain't I great, I go to West Point. And so I would build up West Point for other people. And then when I graduated West Point, everyone who graduates West Point becomes an officer in the military. And so I started to do things which I thought would make me feel better about myself. And I went to airborne school, Ranger school. I got stationed in Germany. And my time in the military was pretty difficult because the military is a socialist organization, right? They give you food, they give you housing, they tell you, what your job is. And I was not one that really liked authority and control. So I got myself into a lot of trouble. I had a lot of disgust and disregard for authority. And I wasn't going to make it a career. That was pretty obvious to me. But something weird happened for me in the military is they gave me leadership positions, which is one thing that officers get to do. And I really like that. I like the opportunity to lead other people. And so I went after that really hard. And I kept getting myself in trouble because I kept disobeying senior officers. But I did a really good job. And that's one of the dilemmas in bureaucracy. You either play politics or you get stuff done. It's hard to do both. And so I decided to get stuff done. And so I kept getting really unique opportunities, even though everyone hated me. So my last year in the military, I was in Iraq, and you guys know that was the first year, 2003, and there was a huge supply issue, big breakdowns everywhere. No one could get supplies. And so my colonel was trying to make general, and he said essentially, if I'm going to succeed, we're in an engineering unit. If we're going to succeed, I need to get materials. So even though this job is reserved for lieutenant colonel, I'm going to give it to this fresh captain, because I want to see stuff get done. So I had the experience of a lifetime in Iraq. Fortunately, I wasn't shooting anyone, but I was trying to find ways to get supplies and solve these problems that the Department of the Army couldn't do. And it all came down to just acting, just doing stuff, and a lot of people kept talking about how great they were at being an officer and what they were going to do in their career. And while they were talking, I was just acting, and I wasn't thinking about it. I was trying to get stuff done. So that was great. I left Iraq, fortunately without getting in trouble, and I got out of the military, and my colonel wrote me an amazing recommendation, for business school, and I knew that I wanted to go into business, and the two schools everyone told me that I couldn't get into were Stanford and Harvard, and so those are the only two I applied to. And fortunately I got in. And then after 2 years at Stanford, I sort of forgot the reason I got out of the military is because I hated bureaucracy, I hated playing games, but I was attracted to the money, so I went into investment banking. And I hated it. All the people who deride capitalism and talk ill of it, when it comes to investment banking, they're actually on the mark. I was doing financial restructuring, working with distressed companies, and we had a term. I learned this term on my first gig. It was called triple fees. My managing director walked up to me and said, "This is a great company. This is a triple fee opportunity." I was like, "Triple fee? What's that?" And so I went and asked one of the vice presidents, and he said, "Oh, triple fees are great. So the first thing you do is you get a really bad company that we represent, and they can't manage their debt load. So the first thing that you do is you repackage their debt, and then we get to take 3% off of that. So if $500 million company, we get what is that, $3 million or 750? I don't know, but you get a lot of money." And I'm like, "Great." And he's, "But you don't solve the problem. They still have a bad company." I'm like, "Oh, so you get a second fee, right?" And the second fee is when they can't manage it, when they can't manage it, they have to go into bankruptcy. And so you get bankruptcy fees, and then you get a restructuring fee. So now you get to completely take out the equity holders, unless you're the union under Obama, then you get priority. But for most people, equity holders get wiped out, debt holders get all the debt, or all the equity, and so all the people that hired you just got screwed, but that's our second fee. But we still didn't fix the company. So then 6 months, a year later, it has to go into a Chapter 7 asset sale, and the entire company gets sold off, liquidated, and now the debt holders lose out too, but we got our triple fee. So, that wasn't something I wanted to do for a career. So I decided to get out. and I got out before my first bonus. I was 6 months away from getting a $250,000 bonus. Not bad for the first year out of business school. But I just jumped because I didn't want to do it anymore. And that's more money than I've made in the 5 years since, but that's fine. I decided to launch a fund to look for a company to buy. And my focus with finding a company to buy was education, because I've always been involved with kids. I love kids. And so I decided to get involved in the education reform movement, trying to help kids, help fix things. And so I started looking for charter management organizations to take over. At the same time, I was involved with the John McCain campaign. I thought John McCain was the man who was a maverick, and he was going to save things for our country. And then I organized a bunch of people, went down to Pennsylvania, knocked on doors, and I was devastated when he lost. And that campaign loss was probably the best thing that ever happened to me, because then I stepped back and I started trying to understand why I was so upset. And I started watching Ron Paul videos, which I know a lot of people in this room probably came to Liberty through Ron Paul. So I started watching Ron Paul videos, made a ton of sense. I read Ayn Rand's Atlas Shrugged for the second time, and that really hit me. The first time I read it, I was a socialist officer, and I didn't get how that stuff worked. Things just started clicking for me. And then at that same time, as I started to get rid of this idea that I needed the state, that the state was somehow good, I realized on the education front, the state is messing up education like they mess everything else up, and I started focusing on homeschooling. And then when I was focusing on homeschooling, there was no businesses in homeschooling to buy, right? And so I had a decision to make. Do I continue to look for a company to buy, to do something I don't really care about? Or do I just act, jump, right? And so I shut down the fund, and I moved down to Austin. I didn't know anyone here except for some Facebook friends like Heather, who never talked to me on Facebook. But I just came down to Austin because I felt like Austin was where the Liberty movement was happening. And I felt like if there was any place that I could be, where I could be around like-minded people, it was going to be here. So I just jumped, hopped on a plane and came down here. I did think about moving to New Hampshire too, but it's cold there, and it's a better place to be. I immediately immersed myself in the Ron Paul movement, as Jose talked about, and I met great people like Matt Wood, and we did some really cool stuff. There was a moment in time when we really thought that we could win the thing, but I don't think even Ron Paul expected it. It was part of growing the movement. But I was really happy being here in Austin, Texas. I was poor, but I was like going after what I wanted to in life, and I was happy. So I come to New Year's Day last year, and I had this great community of Liberty lovers who were surrounding me. I was a designated driver that night. We were up in Northwest Austin. It was the second party we went to, and I was driving home. And my friend Ben, it was his car. We were running out of gas, and so we decided to pull into a gas station to fill up because we didn't want to get stranded on New Year's. And as we pull in, we see a DUI stop in progress. There are two cops there, two squad cars behind the car. A woman's doing a field sobriety. It was a very cold day. She's in high heels and a very, light evening gown, New Year's Eve gown. And there was a female passenger in the car. And we're just watching because we figured that she was going to fail the field sobriety because she was in high heels and it was very cold. But there was no reason for us to get involved. Well, we see the other officer, Robert Snyder. He walks up to the passenger side of the car, starts talking to the female passenger. And I actually thought that, I was not really thinking straight, I guess. I just thought that he was flirting with her. He was bored. And so we're getting ready to leave. He opens the door. I thought that was weird, but it didn't seem like anything was going to happen, so we get ready to leave. And then all of a sudden, I hear a violent scream. And I turn around, and Robert Snyder is ripping this woman out of the car, throwing her to the ground. At the same time, Patrick Gaborski runs over, joins in. They twist her arms behind her back in what is a torture move. There's actually a Border Patrol agent who's in jail for 2 years for doing the exact same thing to an immigrant who was coming across the border. And so I take out my phone and try to take some pictures, and so did my friend Ben. The woman sees us and screams out, please help me, please record this. So then I start yelling at the cops, telling them to stop what they're doing, stop hurting her. They pick her up, cuff her, walk her to the back car, and then Patrick Gaborski turns and comes towards me. And he's marching pretty vigorously, and he goes, "Who do you think you are?" I said, "It doesn't matter who I am, I'm allowed to be here." He gets in my face, I start backing up, he's yelling at me, and then he pushes me. And so as soon as he pushes me, I throw my hands up, I say, "Why are you touching me? You're not allowed to touch me, get out of my face." He keeps pushing me, backs me up into the back of the vehicle, and then he giggles, said I spit on him, and then arrests me. Then they wrestled me to the ground. I didn't resist, but I didn't help them arrest me. And then they took me to the Batmobile where they do the field sobriety test. And I was really confused. I'm like, well, I was a designated driver, and he didn't pull me over. What's going on here? And the guy goes, "Well, you were drinking and driving." I said, "No, I wasn't drinking. I wasn't driving." He goes, "You can't keep your story straight." I said I wasn't driving, and then I said I wasn't drinking. And so then I said, "Okay, fine. I'll blow, but you have to tell me what the score is." And so he said, "Fine." And so I blow one long sustained blow, and he's like, "Okay," and he's looking confused. He's like, "Well, do it again." And I do it again, and he's still looking confused because it said 0.00. And then he goes, "This is the first time this has ever happened. You blew too hard. You broke the machine." So I started laughing at him, and that didn't help the situation out. And Patrick Gaborski walks back into the truck, and the cop looks at him and goes, "Is this guy in here for DUI?" And Gaborski goes, No, for something else. And the guy looks at me and goes, "Well, what's he in here for? Or what are you in here for?" I said, "Well, I saw that guy assaulting a female, and I decided to take pictures and ask questions." Well, Gaborski gets all mad, comes over, takes me out by the arm, walks me over to the cattle car where they house people before they transport them over to the jail. And it was early, so I was the first one there. And he sits me down, and he starts to try to explain the situation to me. "Listen, you didn't know what was going on. We were in the middle of an investigation." And I said, "I know exactly what's going on. You guys assaulted a woman who didn't commit any crime." And then he just flipped, and he goes, basically, "Shut the F up. You don't know what the F you're talking about. You don't F with police. You F with the wrong cop this time, and you're going to F and pay." And so I didn't know what that meant. I get to the jail. And I find out that, spitting on a cop is actually a felony crime, 2 to 10 years. That's what he meant by "you're going to pay." And so I was scared. And I don't know who's been in jail for a night, but it's a really, really scary, lonely experience. They don't let you talk to anyone. You don't know what time it is. I do education consulting. It was New Year's. January 1st is the deadline for a lot of applications, so I let down all of my clients. There was nothing I could do to contact them, so I lost a ton of money, as if it wasn't bad enough that I could put investment banking. And then, I finally get out, and I'm just worried that, everyone's going to see me as a criminal now. And the first thing my friend says after he picked me up and asked me if I was okay was, he said, "There were witnesses." And I was like, "Oh, thank God." Like, I was really worried that I was going to be screwed. "Who are they?" He's like, "I don't know." He said the cops actually didn't let me talk to him. They interfered. One woman came up and tried to give me her business card, and the cops forced me to sit back down in the car. And the other guy across the street started yelling after they arrested all 3 of us, "Why are you arresting these people? They didn't do anything." And the cop said, "If you don't move along, you're going to be the 4th person arrested." He said, "Why? I didn't do anything." And he said, "Well, it's 2 o'clock on New Year's." And so that guy walked off. So we went ahead and we began flyering. We went to Twitter and Facebook and Craigslist to try to get witnesses to step forward. And amazingly, a couple witnesses came forward, and one guy even came forward and shared this YouTube video. Yeah, so I can't get it to go now. Can you click on the side? Just on the side somewhere. I just want to go to the next slide. Just if you click just anywhere in the text area, that'll work. Yeah, all right, thanks. So that came out actually after the cops issued their affidavits, you know, and so in the affidavits they said all this stuff about me being really aggressive, getting in the cop's face, spitting in the cop's face and everything, and so this was great. This came out afterwards, and all of a sudden we just got a ton of support from people. You know, this got run in the media. There's a couple media clips. I'm not going to play the media clips, but the media picked it up. It was awesome. People came out to support us. Pam Farley, a local activist here, a big Ron Paul supporter as well. She set up a legal defense fund, covered all my costs and the 2 female victims, their costs. Guy set up a Free Antonio Beeler website, a Facebook page. You know, other people, Harold Gray, you know, was protesting, setting up protests and, you know, creating flyers. We were going on to news stations, radio stations, and all of a sudden, you know, there was a lot of momentum for me. And this was great because I felt like I'm good now. You know, I'm going to be safe. I did a lot of other cool stuff, including bumping into Art Acevedo at times, who's the police chief. But through this, you know, I felt pretty secure that I was going to be safe and I wasn't going to be going to prison. And then all of a sudden, people started coming forward to me, telling me their own personal stories of abuse. And the thing is, none of these people ever came to me and said, I want to be on the radio or the TV. And none of them said, I want to sue. And a lot of them were people who already spent time in prison. They were all coming to me saying, you know, I just want to tell you that I support you, and I don't want to see you go down like I went down for a crime I didn't commit. And you know, that hit me pretty hard. And then 3 specific stories hit me really hard. One guy was arrested on 6th Street with his fiance. They said he was in a fight. They took him away. He disappeared for 8 hours. His sister gets a call telling her that she has to come down to the hospital. She comes down to the hospital, and his jaw is wired shut. She said, well, what happened to him? And they said, oh, we don't know. He was in a fight on 6th Street. The other story was another guy on 6th Street, a Hispanic guy. He got into an argument with a bouncer. A bunch of cops jumped him, beat the crap out of him, including one cop who was punching him after he was handcuffed. And in an attempt to cover up their assault, they charged him with the same crime they charged me with, spitting in the face of the cop. And he spent 2 years in prison because he had priors. You know, so you know, he couldn't even fight it. And then a third case was a woman who was raped walking home on the east side. Cop stopped her, thought she was a prostitute, raped her at gunpoint. And so, you know, now all of a sudden, you know, I'm hearing all these stories of police abuse, and I knew that that I was in a pretty good situation, but now I had on my mind the weight of all these victim stories. And so people, you know, who were helping me with my case, I started having conversations with them about what we could do. And you know, we were in a really unique situation with all the press attention, with the platform that we had, and really uniquely, people from all across Austin and society supported us. You know, usually it's just blacks or Hispanics who care about this stuff because they're the ones who are victimized the most. But all of a sudden, you know, rich white Republicans and these, you know, these fake liberals here in Austin, they all of a sudden started getting concerned about it. And so we decided to launch the Peaceful Streets Project. And it's been really great. You know, the mission is right there. Through community organizing, engaging in non-political and non-violent direct action tactics, and utilizing new technologies, the Peaceful Streets Project seeks to bring about a cultural shift where individuals understand their rights and hold law enforcement officials accountable, and communities protect and serve each other. So we decided to launch something that would directly help the people, as opposed to creating another nonprofit that would try to lobby the legislature or try to work with the police, you know, union and try to change policies or whatever. We saw that people were doing that and it wasn't accomplishing anything. And people were being victimized, and we wanted to have a real impact immediately. So we decided to try to change culture, you know, through the Peaceful Streets Project. We set up police abuse complaint departments where people could share their stories. We block walked, knocked on doors. We had Know Your Rights trainings. We had cop watches, and then we had a police accountability summit, which I would play this, but yeah, I'm gonna play it. Yeah. Where we handed out 100 video cameras to people in Austin who couldn't afford to have cameras, so they could go out and videotape the police as well. All right, so that was our big culmination of what we were doing in the summer to get that conference going, and it was pretty cool because that led on to other cities starting their own Peaceful Streets project, or at least being in the very early stages of doing stuff. So we've already had Peaceful Streets projects in Houston, Dallas, San Antonio, Manchester, and Albuquerque actually do stuff, get out there and do direct action. And we have other cities who hopefully will be coming up pretty soon. So it's been really big here. The one really cool thing about it is that the people of Austin have really rallied behind us. We have critics, and I have plenty of critics, myself, but they're primarily cops, family members, and people who just worship the state, people who are always going to be opposed to anyone who has the audacity to stand up to them. If you guys actually want to be really disgusted, go to a forum called policeone.com. It's a bunch of police, and they sit there and they actually have this online chat thing where they talk about how they justify various crimes by cops. Well, I think he flinched. I think he lunged. He was reaching for something. Well, he was running with something in his hand, so it could have been a weapon. That's what they talk about. They talk about that, and unfortunately, the law enforcement agencies in this country are really corrupt, and there's not a lot of cops who are willing to stand up to them. So, anyways, I talked a lot just now about myself, and I know you guys are here to talk about liberty. And I know that I may come across as someone who thinks a lot of myself, and I'm a self-promoter. And the fact of the matter is, I do think a lot of myself. And I think that I'm a change agent, and I think that I have the ability within my hands to change the world. And what I'm going to do over the next several years at least is I'm going to keep pushing forward with homeschooling, because I think homeschooling is the future of the liberty movement. I'm going to keep pushing forward with police accountability through the Peaceful Streets Project. I'm going to be working on a new initiative here called Lone Star Libertopia, trying to bring activists to Austin. And who knows, if another Ron Paul shows up, I'll get involved with that as well. But I really want to be the man who actually does something, right? Not the critic. And unfortunately, I feel like sometimes the biggest threat or the biggest challenge to us being successful are the people in this room and the people within the liberty movement. And it's a shame. The fact of the matter is that the people in this room are more rational than 99% of the population, right? You've already seen through the lies, and you already understand a lot of the contradictions. The problem is that we spend so much time criticizing the state and the establishment and politicos and all that, that I think that we allow ourselves to become critical of everything, including of each other. And then you have people who don't want to associate with people who are Rand Paul supporters, or you don't want to associate with people who believe in 9/11 truth, or you think someone is like getting too popular and and is in it for themselves, and so then we start picking at each other when we should be fighting the state, and we should be joining together. And who cares if we have differences? We're 95% everyone. Even the Republicans, I'm talking about the Liberty Republicans, but like the Ron Paul Republicans and anarchists, you're still almost there, and so we shouldn't be fighting each other. The quote that I read you earlier was of from Teddy Roosevelt, and it was a speech that he gave at the Sorbonne in France, and he was giving the speech primarily to, back then, around the turn of the 20th century, these were the very rich, moneyed class. They all lived lives of leisure. They went to school because they didn't have to work, And he was challenging them to actually add value to the world. There's nothing wrong with being rich, being born into wealth, but he didn't like people who were rich, who were powerful, who just sat there and criticized everyone else, and they weren't doing anything to better society themselves. And so this is the quote that actually leads up to the famous part of the quote. Let the man of learning, the man of lettered leisure, beware of that queer and cheap temptation to pose to himself and to others as a cynic, as the man who has outgrown emotions and beliefs, the man to whom good and evil are as one. The poorest way to face life is to face it with a sneer. There are many men who feel a kind of twisted pride in cynicism. There are many who confine themselves to criticism of the way others do what they themselves dare not to even attempt. There is no more unhealthy being, no man less worthy of respect than he who either really holds or feigns to hold an attitude of sneering disbelief toward all that is great and lofty, whether in achievement or in that noble effort which, even if it fails, comes to second achievement. A cynical habit of thought and speech, a readiness to criticize work which the critic himself never tries to perform, an intellectual aloofness which will not accept contact with life's realities. All these are marks not, as the possessor would feign to think, of superiority, but of weakness. They mark the men unfit to bear their part painfully in the stern strife of living, who seek in the affection of contempt for the achievements of others, to hide from others and from themselves in their own weakness. The role is easy. There is none easier, save only the role of the man who sneers alike at both criticism and performance. And so I think that that's something that unfortunately doesn't get attached, because it gets too long, to the really famous part of the speech. And I would really challenge you guys to try to resist that temptation to just be overly cynical and just complain, and actually get out there and start doing something. And I know that a lot of you guys already are, but instead of complaining, there are things that you can do. You can support those who have positioned themselves as leaders in the liberty movement. You can provide moral support or financial support, such as Ron Paul. I donated every money bomb. Right? I didn't have the money to, but I thought it was worth it, at least to spread the message. And people supported us with the Peaceful Streets Project. We raised over $20,000, just to do that one conference, and we had a really big impact. And we couldn't do it without all the people who were behind the scenes doing stuff like that. You can find a job focused on liberty. I know a lot of you guys do have jobs with foundations or Students for Liberty, whatnot. You can become an entrepreneur. I think the most important position in society is that of the entrepreneur. And by being an entrepreneur, you can help lead society forward and create the innovations and provide the jobs that really matter to help us become a truly prosperous and more free society. You can have lots of kids, and I think that everyone here should. Raise them well and homeschool them. All right. You can get involved with Liberty Initiative, such as the Peaceful Streets Project, or start. You can start a new chapter. Move to Austin. If you guys don't live in Austin, you guys should seriously think about moving here. This is the epicenter. And if you like the cold, you can move to New Hampshire. But most importantly, I think you guys should just live life amazingly well. Success is the best way to influence other people, and just be the best that you can be, no matter what it is. We need academics too. I think that we have too many of them. But having good liberty-minded academics to actually counter what's going on in universities would be great. If you want to be an actor, if God forbid you want to go work for the state, maybe you could do something where you can help have a positive influence there. But just live life to the fullest and do the very best that you can. And then when the opportunity presents itself, hopefully you can go ahead and make that leap. Each one of you is amazing. You're amazing, and you have unbelievable abilities to change the world. I think the world of myself, and everyone else should as well. We all believe in the free market, and we understand from an economics perspective that everyone can create value. So go out there and figure out how it is that you're going to create value, and just do phenomenally well at it. There's a difference between skill and talent, right? Talent you're born with. Skill is something that you actually work on. It doesn't matter how little talent you have. If you work harder than other people, you're going to create really great opportunities for yourself. And then when the opportunity presents itself to do something for liberty, and you don't have to spend your career trying to fight the politicians, you don't have to spend your career being an activist, but when the opportunity presents itself, that's when you don't flinch. That's when you just jump. I certainly didn't expect to get arrested on New Year's Day, right? But when the opportunity presented itself, I realized I had the opportunity to try to help expand liberty, and so that's what I tried to do. And I know that everyone else in this room has the ability to do that and much more. And who knows, the next great liberty leader could be in this room, the one who's going to help lead us out of the tyranny of what's going on today. So this is just one more quote from Teddy Roosevelt, which sums up pretty concisely everything that I was saying. But don't be a critic. Don't just sit there and complain. Actually do something, like Heather said. Direct action. Get involved, work together, and together we really can lead this nation, this society, closer towards liberty. Hopefully our grandchildren can experience it. Thank you.